We're still answering the question, does God exist? And tonight we're going to be talking about the aesthetic argument. And I had 5 points that I was trying to get through when it came to the teleological argument, and I got through 4, so I'm going to do just a short one on the 5th one, evolutionary design, and that will help go back and help us review a little bit before we get into the next one. So, start out with a casual perusal of nearly any article by aesthetic scientists when they are discussing the complexity of various species, revealed that even they cannot help but intuitively acknowledge a designer. Such writings are riddled with Freudian slips as they liberally use the term design, apparently without the naturalistic writers facing the implications. In other words, when they're talking about, let's say, this was designed for this was designed, and they'll use that word designed, but all the time they're saying it wasn't designed, that it was all kind of, it happened on its own, it was random chance, and so on. But they'll be using the word design and not even realize that they're saying, well, this looks like it's designed, and it was designed to do this, designed to do that. So anyway, is it not true that at the moment won't acknowledge the existence of a design? In other words, once you acknowledge the existence of a design, that by implication points back to a designer. And I think the point I gave there was, if you see a poem, you automatically understand that there was a poet somewhere that wrote that poem. There wasn't just a bunch of letters that fell together and made a beautiful poem. But so you would assume that there was a poet if you have a poem. So if you assume there's a design, why would you not assume there's a designer? There's somebody that makes that design. And I wanted to consider this, and you don't have to worry about writing these down, because this is nothing you need to really remember. But this is introductory engineering textbook, and this is what it lists at the beginning of this textbook when coming up with a design. It says this is the steps this textbook has you to go through. Problem, symptom or expression, definition of product need, marketing information, problem definition, including statement of desired outcome, conceptual design and evaluation, feasibility study, design analysis, codes, standards review, physical and analytical models, synthesis of alternative solutions back to design analysis for iterations, decision, selection of one alternative, prototype production, testing and evaluation back to design analysis for more iterations, product drawings, instruction manuals, material specification, process and equipment selection, safety review, we're not done yet, pilot production, inspection and quality assurance, packaging, marketing and sales literature, product. Okay, now this design book, this book that they're referring to here, has to do with the process that this textbook is going to teach these engineering students on creating a product, designing a product. And so it gives you in 14 different steps that they're going to teach you how to go through in order for you to design a product. The interesting thing is, this is I've wrote here, the design process is unquestionably lengthy, technical, complex, and calculated. The aforementioned outline was for the production of even the simplest of products. You look sometimes when they come up with a new product, what they have to go through and what all the hoops they have to jump through and all the work it takes to design the simplest of products, and then you think about having a design without a designer. It takes a lot of work to get there. Is it reasonable to think that something as complex as our universe could occur randomly without a designer? That's our argument. That's what we would go by, and that's what we can present to anybody on any level of scientific endeavor, whatever. It doesn't matter. This is a question we can always bring up to them. Is it reasonable to think that if you have a universe designed like we do, would it be reasonable to think that you have it with all this design, without having a designer? Is there anything in this room that could have happened without a designer? These tables, the chairs, the lights, anything else, it had to be designed, didn't it? There's things that we see. We have these fluorescent lights up here. Now, that's old school. If you replace them with LED lights. You buy a LED light fixture, and you can't take the bulb out because the bulb will last for so many years, you just replace the fixture. That's a light. That's not even a human being. That's not something that breathes and eats. That's a design that they've come up with. The world that we live in seems to be fine-tuned to perfection for the existence of life in all forms, all of its forms, including human. Think about that, how perfect this place has to be designed in order for us to live here. Right now, out west, they're having problems because of the drought, and their lakes are beginning to, and their reservoirs are beginning to lose their water, and they're talking about rationing and all the things they have to do. I'm not going to get too far in this because I could get carried away. They're not telling you the things where they have inhibited, they've cut back on water supplies because they're trying to save a snail or some small animal, some salamander, that you can't use this water over here because you might kill 4 salamanders that might go extinct. They don't tell you about all that you have in California and all around, but so we won't get there. But anyway, this place is designed where, for instance, how long could you live without water? Where do you find water on this planet? In the ground. It falls out of the sky. You can get it from all different. You can get it out of lakes. You can get it out of rivers. You can get it out of ponds. You can get it all different places. You can get water, and we need water, but the water is supplied for us. Okay, what if, and we'll just use this for an example, what if God was not there, God did not create anything, and it just happened on its own? You can't have any creature on this earth without water. So you have to evolve the water first. It has to come into being first before you can have animals that have to have water in order to exist. The biggest portion of our bodies are made up of water. And you can only go... How many of you saw that? What was the name of that movie we just watched Sunday night? 13 Lives, 2.5 hours long. It's about those soccer players in Thailand, those little boys that went into this cave, and they got way back in the cave, and the rains came before anybody expected them to, and they were trapped in there. And I forgot how many days it was finally. It was a long time that they were in there. And I had remembered some of the things about it, but some things I didn't. And the things that they went through, the technology that they had, and the way that they had to get those kids out, nobody could figure out how to. They didn't know that. First place, after as many days as they'd been back in there, they figured they were drowned or they had starved or whatever. And it was 2 divers from England, rescue divers, that came and volunteered and came, and they were the ones that got in there and found the kids. And then when they came back out, they said, how do we get them out? There's 13 of them, and you're talking about places, holes about this big for them to just barely get through. They'd have to drag their tanks behind them to get through these holes to get in there to get to these kids. But these kids stayed alive for all those days until they got water in there and got food in there to take care of them. How is a human body able to maintain that and do that? This is a complicated structure that we have here. I don't ever want to experience starvation or dying of thirst or anything, but how intricately designed our world is to supply everything that we need. It's amazing. So to assume that it just happened is hard for me to grasp. And I had this picture over here last time, so back for part of review. This is just an ear. This is what's inside your ear, and this is the reason you hear what I'm saying tonight. I can say a word, and you hear it with these mechanisms here, with all the things that the tympanic cavity, I don't know why they don't just, that's the eardrum, that's what it is. That's the hammer, and that's the anvil, that's the stirrup, and they have to put fancy names for it. But anyway, all those things, if you take out one part, you don't hear it all. It's not that you can hear a little bit. If you took out the stirrup there, it's not that you hear a little bit, you can hear it all. You couldn't hear it all. Those things have to be perfectly in place in order for you to hear. And then you have the nerves that take it to your brain, and your brain interprets what I'm saying. And you know what I'm saying because your brain is taking what the sound waves that's coming out of my mouth, and you're receiving it in your ears, and it's going through to your brain, and your brain interprets it, and you know what I'm saying. That's amazing. Now think about that production we just looked at of what it takes according to you're training these engineers how to produce a product and the steps that they had to go through, and to think that this system right here happened on its own in random chance. Which piece would evolve first? Not a piece there is any good for anything at all without the rest of them. A lot of people don't like using this expression because it's used a lot, and so the evolutionists say it's ridiculous. But it's called irreducible complexity. What part of that? What it means is, what part of that could you take out and still hear? Nothing. Take an eye. What part could you take out and still see? You have to have the retina, you have to have the cornea, you have to have the iris, you have to have all the things. You have to have, the light gets lighter, and the pupil gets smaller to cut out some of the light so it doesn't destroy your retina. And then as it gets darker, it gets bigger so you can get less more light in. That's the reason when you step into a dark room, if you'll stand still a minute, you'll get where you can see some, because it opens up and lets more light come in. That's complicated because the mechanism for it just to have happened on its own. And what could you leave out and it still work? And that's where it would have to go from there. When trying to explain where it all came from, naturalists raise more questions than they answer, because they'll say, "Well, this." We'll get past that for just a second. Also, with the ear, there's a picture of the ear that we had the last time we were together. I took the ear with all the parts in it, and then the nerves, and way it goes. It doesn't just go to any place in the brain. It goes into in specific parts of the brain where if it went to anywhere else, you still wouldn't hear. But it goes to those places, and those places can interpret what's coming out of here and out of here into that part of the brain, and as quick as I say something, you hear it. But it goes from here, it goes into your brain, and it interprets what it is, and so you know what I'm saying. That's kind of amazing to me. Can the teleological argument prove that God created the universe and all that pertains to it? The answer is no. There's no way in the world anything can prove. You can't 100% prove God. Okay, the next question. Can any field of science unequivocally demonstrate that matter, energy, intelligence, and life came about by random chance? And the answer to that question is no. So these things that we're coming up with, reason for us to believe, and answers to these arguments are things that we can use, but we don't need to delude ourselves with thinking that we can ever prove to anybody, especially somebody who doesn't want to believe. If you have somebody who doesn't want to believe, it doesn't matter what you tell them. They don't believe it. So that gets us to our category for tonight, which is the aesthetic argument. Here's a quote. And down at the bottom you see it says, who do you think said this? So I'm going to let you. Some authors believe that many structures have been created for the sake of beauty, to delight man or the Creator, or for the sake of mere variety. Such doctrines, if true, would be absolutely fatal to my theory. Who do you think said that? That's attributed to Charles Darwin. Okay, now what does he say in that? Naturalistic evolution cannot explain why something would become beautiful for the sole benefit of others. Why? Why is it they can't explain it? What is it about evolution that would help put it in a position where it really can't explain why something is beautiful? Why you see something as beautiful? Okay, let's go a little further. Evolution is survival of the fittest, and the strong survive. Okay? It is the selfish, bloody battle of the strong for survival. It is not about benefiting others, because if it's survival of the fittest, you're not trying to help somebody else or some other creature survive. You would kill that creature if it helped you survive. Isn't that true? Isn't that what naturalistic evolution says? Isn't that what it teaches us? It's survival of the fittest. You have to be the fittest, and you're not going to do something for the benefit of somebody else because you want to survive yourself. So if naturalistic evolution, i.e. Atheism, is true, evolving a trait must have a selfish benefit, not for the benefit of others. Now this is what we're getting at about the aesthetic argument. Richard Dawkins wrote a book called The Selfish Gene. And in that, in fact, if species developed due to survival of the fittest, there would be no reason for a species to evolve in any way that would benefit another species. And that's pretty much the argument that he's making, that genes are selfish. They're there to replicate themselves and to benefit themselves. Coronavirus. That virus doesn't want to do anything for our benefit. But what the theory has always been, and what usually happens, is the reason the coronavirus has gotten weaker and weaker and weaker is because the coronavirus, if you have a virus that kills its host, then the virus dies. So what viruses there are that infect somewhere else, they're going to start not killing their host. So they're going to get less deadly and less deadly and less deadly. I've read from several doctors and different ones that looked at on the coronavirus, and they said that everybody would catch the coronavirus, period. And he said, and it takes that in order to get it to the point where it's degraded to where it's no more than a cold or a minor case of the flu. And that's what seems to have been happening with these latest cases of the flu. How severe was yours? Have you had the flu? Have you had the flu that was that bad before? Okay, and so what I'm saying is, there's have you noticed there's not as many people in the hospital, not as many people dying from it, and they'll say, well, it's because of the vaccine. I'm not against the vaccine. Don't get me wrong. But here's the thing: this last strain, the vaccine does nothing at all for this latest strain. The booster they have now supposedly takes that into consideration and have changed the booster so that it will help you fight off this latest strain. But this latest strain, if you had all your vaccines up to that point, it would do nothing to keep you from catching this latest strain. That's what they say, not me. Isn't that what you heard? That's what we all have read. What then is the aesthetic argument? What is aesthetic? In Merriam-Webster dictionary, it says, of or relating to or dealing with aesthetics or the beautiful. What then is the aesthetic argument? And here it is. The argument highlights the fact that beauty exists, and more specifically, the ability to appreciate beauty exists. Atheism cannot adequately explain this appreciation in the diverse forms it is found, because that appreciation, by and large, has no evolutionary advantage. In other words, just knowing something's beautiful gives you no evolutionary advantage over another creature. Or this creature being, well, I'll get to that in just a second. I don't get ahead of myself. So the argument says that the existence of beauty proves that a God must exist who cares for his creation and wishes to give us joy and pleasure. Okay? Now follow me on this. Is that beautiful? Why? Is calming. Why is it calming? Why is this necessarily beautiful? Why couldn't, do you think there's somebody that say that's ugly? Just, you know that that's beautiful, and when you see it, you know it's beauty. Okay, is this beautiful? Okay, I've had people to tell me before that like to go to the mountains. I said, have you ever been to the Biltmore House? They said, no, I like to go see God's creation. I said, I do too. I like seeing all the mountains and all this. But God created the men that designed and built this house. And it's a beautiful place to visit. And that's beautiful, right? Is that beautiful? This is the inside of a mansion like the Biltmore House. Well, what's happened? That's beautiful. That's not. In other words, it keeps somebody, because somebody didn't keep that up, because somebody didn't continue to work on it, because somebody didn't keep it in order, then it has gotten like this instead of like that. Okay, I don't care how many times I go there, the place amazes me. 250 rooms, and got a dining room that's 40-some feet wide and 70-some feet long and 70-foot high ceiling in it, in the dining room. We could take all of our houses and put inside the dining room. Stack them on top of each other. Anyway, but we know this is a beautiful house. This lawn out here is beautiful. We say the fountain is beautiful. All this we see is beauty. Why is it beautiful? What function does it have? What function does beauty have? Does it have any function that helps anything? It makes you feel good, but other than that, does it feed you? No. Flowers are beautiful, but a lot of them you can't eat.
It can restore your soul if you're sitting on that riverbed.
Yes, it can. Yes, it can. It can help out tremendously. Natural selection. Beauty. Now, this is, follow me on this. Beauty evolved accidentally in various creatures and then remained in those creatures because it helped them personally in getting a mate. That's one of the reasons that they said for beauty. Okay? There's a problem. Wouldn't beauty need to exist before any creature could determine what was and what was not beautiful? Okay, and they say in order to get a mate. Okay? Is this bird beautiful? No. Is this one? Okay. Why is this one still existing? It looks like he would have ceased to exist, or she would. It would. But there's ugly animals out here, and there's beautiful animals out here. But why is this one beautiful? Why does our brain tell us this is beautiful? We say, well, it's more colorful. Well, why is more colorful beautiful? Why is it this is more beautiful? But we just know it's not. There's not a person here that thinks this bird's more beautiful than this one, right? Anybody? You can raise your hand. You know. But if this is what attracts a mate, he'd been dead a long time ago. He'd been gone. But this one, now this is colorful. This is a beautiful animal here. So, but we automatically recognize beauty. And there's beauty here on this earth, but what function does it have that keeps anything alive on this planet? Have you ever heard, what I have here is, have you ever heard a musical selection that's an instrumental, there's no words to it, but when you hear that music, you have an emotional response to that music. Not to words, it's not that you were touched by the words, it's that that particular tune touched something in your emotions. You can hear some upbeat songs and that gets your feet tapping and gives you a happy feeling, and then you can hear the other music that can almost give you a sad feeling, and some give you a peaceful feeling. Why? Why is it those notes put together that way? Why is it that is beautiful and this is not? Why is it a swan is beautiful and a buzzard is not? I mean, if you compare those two, you're always going to think the swan's more beautiful than the buzzard. But the buzzard serves a purpose, so they're here for a reason. But you have music where you hear that music and it's beautiful and it creates certain emotions in us because of a musical piece, the music itself. Again, if it was words and we were touched by what the words said, that'd be one thing. But this is musical notes. And the only reason we can say notes is because we use notes in order to write out music and to be able to portray, to convey it to somebody else. But so far as we have created the word notes, it's what we've created, and created the music staff and everything was made in order to convey a piece of music to somebody else so somebody else can play this piece of music. But that doesn't create the tune, that doesn't create the sound, that doesn't say why this sound is more beautiful than this sound. There's sounds outside. Which is more beautiful, to hear a mockingbird or a crow? Why? Why do some foods taste good and others don't? Why do some foods taste good to some and taste bad to others? Why is it that you all like coconut? I don't understand that. I don't like coconut. You don't. There's two of us here. Pardon me? There's people. So you see, she loves coconut and we hate coconut. Okay. Coconut's the one thing I don't eat. It's coconut. And there's people like you all love coconut. Why? Why is that so? Why is that not all food that tastes good is good for you? It looks like everything that tastes good would be good for you, doesn't it? Would that make sense? Instead, what'd you say? I wish. Yeah, I wish that everything. Well, we see, I'm in an unusual situation because I like all kinds of food. I like all different ones, except coconut. You can leave the coconut off. The rest of it, bring all you want. And no, and a lot of times the things that we like the taste of the best are the things that's not good for us. In fact, I made that example Sunday morning about chocolate ice cream. If you ate nothing but chocolate ice cream, you get unhealthy in a hurry. You'd be happy for a little while, for a short period. In fact, it'd be very short because your stomach get upset. But why is it we have different tastes and different things? God could have created, or through the evolutionary process, food items. We could just eat food and have no taste whatsoever. And you eat just to sustain your body. So why is it that we have such enjoyable things that we like to eat? And it puts, when I talk about enjoyable food, every one of you smile. Because you know how it is when something tastes good, it just makes you, but why? Why does it need to taste good in order for you to eat it?
That's
Because the apple, how you know it was an apple? And the Bible doesn't say apple, it says fruit. I think it was a peach. Because I like it wasn't coconut. It wasn't coconut. She'd never touched that coconut. It wouldn't bother it. I think it was a peach because I like peaches better than I like apples. I like apples too. How would any of this have come to be by natural selection? How could beauty come about by natural selection. What would bring it into being through natural selection? Because through natural selection, you develop things because of need or it's either need or it's to combat something else, to make you more immune to a particular thing through natural selection. Why do we, out of all the creatures on the earth, we stand upright all the time? No other animal does. There are other animals that can stand up. There's some of the apes that can, and bears and stuff, but most of the time they're down on all fours. But we stand up. We stand upright. But it's hard to explain that with natural selection. Even if a beautiful trait could accidentally evolve in one creature, another creature simultaneously must also evolve an appreciation of that beauty. So in other words, if something's going to evolve beauty, then you have to have something that evolves that has an appreciation for the beauty that this one has evolved into. Or how would you know it was beautiful? How would the two birds I showed you, how would you know that one was beautiful? Even if natural selection could adequately explain why something beautiful tends to survive, it does not explain why we would see that things as beautiful that thing as beautiful in the first place. We determine what's beautiful to a large degree, but all of us see we all have something in common when it comes to that. When I saw that beautiful mountain scene there with the water running through there, I don't know anybody that says that's ugly. Now there's people that say New York City with all the lights and all the buildings is beautiful. Now that's not beautiful to me. I don't have any. I'd rather see the mountains and the creeks and all this kind of stuff than to see that. On the other hand, I like going to the Biltmore House. I like visiting other mansions and places that are beautiful, that have been created. Even if in response to the aesthetic argument, one could explain why beauty exists in the animal kingdom, he did not explain how evolution could create beauty in the first place. He did not explain why beauty is beauty. Isn't that true? What about in natural selection, what could explain beauty? That's the aesthetic argument. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and therefore everyone differs somewhat on what constitutes beauty. Nevertheless, everyone possesses the inbuilt faculty, a capacity that causes them to conceptualize the characteristic of beauty. All of us see beauty. All of us recognize beauty. It's in us. So how could that have just happened by chance? How does beauty exist? It just happened on its own, or because an omnibenevolent God exists who wants to give his children good things as any decent parent would. This is a continuation, who wants humans to experience joy and pleasure. If you say there's a creator, there's a God that created us, and that we're his creation, he would want us to experience joy. And he would want us to experience peace. He would want us to experience beauty. That would explain it a whole lot more than natural selection. Any questions or comments?